Welcome to the Bi-Geekly Report, your bi-weekly take on queer representation in geek pop culture. I'm your host, Elle Sanchez. This episode, we're going to be talking about one of my new favorite TV shows that is an Hulu original, but it's important to note that at the time that this recording happened, the entire season is not released. So right now, I've only seen up to episode 9. It is a 10-episode season, so there is one more episode until the season that is the season finale that I did try to find illegally, but I couldn't. And so anyway, we're at episode 9. That's what we're going to be talking about. But we're talking about The Runaways, which is a TV show made by Hulu that is based on the very, very popular Marvel comic written and created by Brian K. Vaughan that a lot of people loved. I have another disclosure that's important to note. I have not read this comic book. And I should have. The thing is, I worked at a comic book store when this book first came out, when the singles started coming out. And everybody loved it. And I was told all the time that, like, why aren't you reading Runaways? You need to be reading Runaways. And one, I'm a contradictory person. I don't like to read what I'm told. That's why I've never read Love and Rockets very much. But so I didn't actually read it, but I have read a couple single issues. So when we're talking about the TV show, we're going to focus mostly on the canon that the TV show has created, because one, I don't know a whole lot of the comic book other than the couple single issues I read and a little bit of research. And also this is mostly just for the TV show, which is introducing these characters to people who haven't read the comic book, for the most part, but there are obviously a lot of comic book fans that have watched it too. First, a little bit of a backstory if you haven't watched the show. What the entire backstory is of these characters is that we've got bunch of teenagers. I can't remember how many teenagers there are. I think it's 5, whatever, it doesn't matter. Group of teenagers that have been friends since they were young because their parents are all members of a charity organization. So they think something that also comes off as kind of like a fraternal, like skull and bone sort of organization called the Pride. And their parents get together, I think it's once a year, to do this event for Pride. Not our Pride, but their Pride, their scary ass Pride. And the kids usually play with each other and hang out around this time. So they become friends, and they were like buds for a long time, and then had a really traumatic thing happen where one of the kids killed herself, as far as they know. And then they kind of went separate ways, but then they all come back together for another night of a Pride event, the Pride event, and so they can hang out. And during this event, they witness a catastrophic thing. I don't know if I can they witness basically their parents sacrificing a teenager. So then they're like, oh shit, our parents are criminals. So the whole show is based around these kids investigating, are their parents villains? What does that mean? And eventually they run away, but they don't in this season that I've seen so far. But that's the idea. And some of them are superpowered. So let's go over who these kids are. We've got Alex. He's a nerd. He's really tech smart and tech savvy. Then we've got Gertrude Yorks. She is Jewish and if you look her up in Wikipedia, they describe her as a riot girl, which I don't think they know what that term means, but she's a social activist, feminist. She talks about social justice a lot. She's got purple hair. She's very cute. And she has a telepathic link with a dinosaur who goes by Old Lace because she nicknamed herself Arsenic at some point. So that's why she named the dinosaur Old Lace. But anyway, then we've got Chase Stein, he's your basic, like, straight cis white guy on the team. They actually try to make him more interesting than he is in the comic book. I believe in the comic book he's a little more fratty and boring, but in the show they try to his dad is very smart scientist who is a big part of the Pride group because he develops technology and stuff like that. In the comic book, Chase is an idiot, but in the show they're trying to make him like, oh, he's just as smart as his dad, and he's also a lacrosse player dude. But anyway, so he's there. His whole thing is that he uses these fistigons that his dad created which are what they sound like. Like Nintendo gloves that basically throw a sonic wave at you. And then he has X-ray goggles. So it's him. And then we've got Carolina Dean. Carolina is your conventional white lady who's very conventionally attractive, blonde, pretty lady who in the storyline, her parents are in the comic book, they're both actors, but in this, her dad is like a kind of goofy, like kind of older action star. And her mom is the head of a church. And this is true to the show. This is not in the comic, but her mom is the head of a church that's called like the Gaborum. And it's basically a take on Scientology. So she was raised in this sort of cult-like church, which has a huge connection to the Pride organization all their parents are in. So we've got her, and then we've got Molly Hernandez, who is super strong. She has super strength. She's an adopted daughter of the Yorks, so her and Gert are sisters. And then we've got Nico, who's one of my favorites. Nico is the goth girl who's also, what, a witch. It's the best. She's got a little sorcerer wand. It's really great. In the comic, the wand actually like comes out of her body, I believe, like when she's injured or bleeding. But in the TV show, it's just a wand that activates by, I think, piercing her thumb, because they didn't want to add the self-harm aspect, rightfully so, to the TV show. So that's what we got. That's our Runaways lineup. You might be asking yourself, why are you talking about this show? I mean, it's obviously geekly because it's a great comic book and now a cool show about kids with superpowers. Yes, that's very true. But also, important part of the show is we've got a queer superhero character on television. It's very exciting. And let's get into it. In the comic book, the character Carolina, who is, like I said, the kind of conventional blonde cis lady, she is actually like closeted in the first couple episodes, which you kind of don't realize because she has sort of a romance they kind of build up with Chase, which is so predictable, you know, and it's actually kind of really, it's a really trigger warning part where she's almost getting assaulted by his people on his lacrosse team at a party, and he intervenes. But then after that, they have a little bit of a romance, which is silly. And she seems very disinterested in it. And you kind of, if you're me, maybe hope it's because she's queer, but then assume it's because, oh, she's raised in this cult-like church. She's probably just not interested in relationships with people outside the church, or she's kind of prudish or whatever it is. But turns out that in like a few episodes in, all of a sudden she kind of runs into, sees Nico and Alex, they're making out, and her reaction is shock. Yes. Like, oh, didn't know you guys had a thing going. But there's a little bit, which I feel like as a queer person, you can see in the face where you're like, I feel like that's more than shock. I feel like she's upset in a way that's like, And then throughout the show, at some point, Gert realizes, picks up on, oh, you like Nico, like Nico, which is a storyline that existed in the comic book. Carolina did have a crush on Nico, and it was, unfortunately, in the comic book, unrequited. She did try to kiss her at one point, and Nico kind of wasn't interested, and I believe Nico's straight. She has a thing with Alex. So in the TV show, though, we do get the scene where Carolina tells her in episode 9, the last one I watched, they're at a school dance, and she finally stops her in a hallway and is like, oh, I have something I have to tell you. It's very cute. She kisses her, but surprisingly, Nico, they pause, she looks at her, and she kisses her again, and Nico kisses her back. So maybe they're changing the storyline for the show. We don't know. But it looks like maybe this relationship could actually blossom in this show, which would be amazing. I'm very excited that they actually had the high femme girl be portrayed as the queer character. That's kind of newer, especially because if you watch the show, let's say if you're a straight person, you watch the show, I assume that you're going to assume if there is a queer character, it's going to be the angry feminist or the goth witch, which, I mean, fingers crossed that they're queer too, but it's the high femme religious lady, which is great. I mean, because everybody's queer. It's, we're all queer. So you can be a super high femme lady that's a Scientologist and also be queer. And that's great. That's cool. So I'm into it. I'm really excited to see where this goes. I hope the only thing that's kind of bothering me a little bit is since she hasn't come out, she's still kind of closeted, but ever since she started, at least Gert knows about her feelings for Nico. Ever since that became part of the plot of the series, she started dressing slightly more like butch. And then there was a scene where she was wearing a tank top and putting on a jacket, and I'm pretty sure she'd had unshaven armpits. And here's how I feel about that. First, great. I'm for it because, as a person who's slightly masked, I don't shave my armpits. I don't care about that. But I feel like maybe they can lean into this whole thing of her being kind of high femme and caring about that and still being able to be queer. You know what I mean? But it's a double-edged sword, because the thing is, yeah, I'm pro people not considering stuff that we do in general for, let's say for male gaze. And so that's great. But at the same time, I'm like, but, she doesn't have to become the stereotypical to everybody else idea of queerness. So I don't know. It is what it is. But either way, I'm excited about this plot twist to see where it goes. Those are my thoughts on Runaways so far. Like I said, have not seen the finale. Episode 9 did end on a big cliffhanger. So by the time this comes out, I will have seen the finale, and hopefully it ends how I want. But who knows? I'm sure it's going to be great. Either way, let me know your thoughts on Runaways in the comments, how you feel about their queer representation in that show. I'm feeling good about it so far. I think they're handling it pretty well. But you disagree or agree, let me know. Thanks for watching the Bi-Geekly Report for Jet Space Magazine. I've been Elle Sanchez. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And let me know if you know now what happened. I want to know so bad what happens in the last episode. We'll talk about it. I'll figure it out. I'll find out. Hopefully. Oh, God. How can you end an episode where everyone's literally facing off with their parents and being like, let's fight, and then it cuts? Not cool. Maybe that's how we should end this episode. I'm about to reveal my superpowers, and then we just